Good morning, ma'am. Good morning, classmates. Buckle your seatbelt because today we will travel to Egypt. But first, let's turn back the clock to 3100 BC. Did you know that the ancient Egypt is one of the earliest and most advanced civilization around 3100 BC and thrived for over 3000 years, situated in northeastern Africa along the banks of the Nile River? They were pioneers in agriculture, medicine, and mathematics. They invented the calendar, ways to measure distances, improvements in irrigation, medical surgery, and also applied their knowledge in agriculture. They were experts in preserving the dead and mummification. So Egypt was divided into two portions, the Upper and the Lower Egypt. In ancient time, life in Egypt depends on the Nile River, the life-sustaining body of water that flows south from the north, cutting through the desert sand and the Sahara. The Nile River brought yearly flooding that helped make the soil fertile, ideal for agriculture, and they also called Fertile Crescent. If it floods too much, it can destroy farms, fields, and settlements. If it doesn't, the crops could wither and die, causing famine and starvation. However, they were able to adapt using a calendar. They were able to predict the flooding of the river. So one of the most famous things about ancient Egypt is the pyramids. These were huge structures built as tombs for pharaohs, and the Great Pyramid of Giza is around 4,600 years old. It was the tallest human-made structure in the world for around 3,800 years. Egyptians believed in a never-ending afterlife. They thought it was more important than their life here on Earth, so they spent a lot of time planning for their death. Preserved the bodies of important people through mummification. They built special tombs which they fill with all the things they want, including their jewelries and cats. Egypt was ruled by powerful leaders called the pharaohs. These pharaohs belonged to different dynasties, which were like royal families that ruled one after the other. So in ancient times, people in Egypt used the reigns of certain rulers as a date mark that help archaeologists as basis. Scribes kept records for their kings that scholars are able to understand and unlock the key in translating their writing system. So ancient Egyptian had a very specific and organized social structure. The pharaoh is at the top of the pyramid. He is the supreme ruler who they considered a god, and his word is a law to his people, followed by the government officials contained by the vizier. He is or who is the right hand of the pharaoh, followed by the nobles and priests. They help govern Egypt's um, They help govern Egypt's region and make sure that they stay orderly and law-abiding. And followed by the scribes, they are the record makers and keepers, skilled artisans and craftspeople, peasant farmers and workers, and lastly, servants and slaves. Ancient Egyptians were skilled farmers, builders, and craftsmen. They made pottery, jewelry, and clothing. They also enjoyed games like sonnet, storytelling, and music. Clothing was made from linen, a light and comfortable fabric. Both men and women wore simple tunics, and makeup was very important for them. Both men and women used kohl to line their eyes, or this kohl is also called eyeliner, and they often wore wigs due to the hot climate. And for females, they should have a mirror, makeup, and wig. So that's their clothing and appearance. So Egyptians had a very special way of writing called the hieroglyphs, a mixture of pictures and glyphs or symbols. They wrote on a material called papyrus, which they which was made from reeds growing along the Nile. So they're the first people to develop a system of writing because they believed to the importance of writing down what was happening. And hieroglyphs allowed them to immortalize their kings in history. So ancient Egyptians believed in many gods and goddesses. One example here is Ra was the sun god, Isis was the goddess of magic and motherhood, Osiris, god of the underworld, which where he symbolized death and resurrection. And these gods had both human and animal traits. So ancient Egyptian believed in the afterlife, as I said a while ago, with high importance. Pharaohs and nobles spent their lives preparing for their death, and they tried to ensure that they would enjoy a comfortable afterlife. So they developed an effective embalming and mummification techniques, including wrapping the deceased in strips of linen cloth that took advantage of the dry desert climate that keeps the body parts intact. All things they need were also added, and the walls were lined with prayers and spells meant to protect the dead. They also believe that cats are very special, so they take their cats with them and they often mummified them and they put them in their tombs. As you can see there in the picture. So kung mapapansin ninyo, they wore jewelries. And according sa na-research ko, jewelry had both religious and symbolic meaning. First, they wore or wear jewelries to please the gods. They believed the more jewelries they wore, the more the gods would bless them. On the other hand, jewelry also symbolized wealth and power, and when they die, they put these jewelries in their tombs. So religion was a central aspect of life in Egypt. Egyptians believed in many deities and performed rituals and offerings to appease them. Temples were places of worship and priests played important roles. So here are some of the ancient Egyptian pharaohs. First one here is Djoser. King Djoser is considered the most famous third dynasty Egyptian pharaoh, but little is known about his life. He supervised the construction of famous step pyramid of Saqqara, a very important milestone in the ancient Egyptian architecture. The pyramid where Djoser is buried was the first building with an iconic staircase design. Second here is Khufu, the fourth dynasty pharaoh. Khufu left a legacy of the Great Pyramid of Giza, which became one of the seven wonders of the world. Next here is Hatshepsut. Hatshepsut was the second woman to become pharaoh. The first one was Sobenek Neferu, and ancient Egypt's first female ruler. Next here is King Tut became the youngest pharaoh in ancient Egyptian history, ascending the throne at the age of 9 or 10. This made this pharaoh famous among others. Um, he was known as Tutankhamun, only ruled for 10 years and died at the age of 20, and the cause of his death is still a mystery of the Egyptologists. Next here is Ramesses II. Reign was the greatest of the 19th dynasty, making it particularly striking. This son of Seti I then declared himself a god. He earned a reputation as a great warrior, fathered 96 children, and ruled for 67 years. Then last here is Cleopatra, the last active ruler of the Ptolemaic kingdom of Egypt. Cleopatra was an intelligent ruler who succeeded in bringing prosperity. The stories of her affairs with Julius Caesar and Mark Antony are well documented. It's like the story of Romeo and Juliet. But without further knowledge of the story, people concluded it was tragic. Cleopatra's decision to commit suicide in 30 BC ended the Egyptian kingdom. So after thousands of years, the great civilization of ancient Egypt began to decline due to various reasons, including invasions and changes in leadership. However, their legacy lives in the forms of their incredible monuments, writings, and ideas. So ancient Egyptian literature tackled almost all aspects of life and was classified by subjects into various genres such as inscription on tombs, stele, obelisk, and temples, myth, stories and legends, religious writings, philosophical works, autobiographies, and many more. The literature of ancient Egypt are some of the earliest known examples of literature in the world. Literature was used for different reasons, such as to teach, to entertain, and was used prolifically in religious worship. So one of the primary functions of ancient Egyptian literature was to impart knowledge and skills. Example here is the instructions of Amenemope offered the moral guidance and practical advice on living virtuous life. Another is the instructions of Tahotep. This provides wisdom on social etiquette, governance, and family relations. Ancient Egyptian literature is one of the oldest alongside Sumerian literature. It spans a long period from when the pharaohs ruled Egypt to when the Romans took over. Ancient Egyptians used two main types of writing, the hieroglyphs and hieratic. Hieroglyphs, these were pictures that has a meaning often carved into stone and used for the important things like temple walls and tombs. On the other hand, hieratic, this is a faster way of format. This is a cursive format of writing and is used every day for writing letters and documents. Now let's proceed with the Egyptian writers and poets. Naguib Mahfouz was born on December 11, 1911 at Cairo, Egypt, and he died on August 30, 2006. Mahfouz is regarded as one of the first contemporary writers in Arabic literature along with Taha Hussein that explore themes of existentialism. Egyptian novelist. He is an Egyptian novelist and screenplay writer who was awarded the Nobel Prize for Literature in 1988. So here are some of his works. In the Time of Love, Marimar, Before the Throne, Shara Modern, Children of the Alley, and many more. So, one of his famous work is titled Half a Day. It is a short story that uses allegory to explore the passage of time, the human condition, and the cycle of life. The story follows a young boy on his first day of school, but through a series of events, the boy's experience represents an entire lifetime. So here is the plot structure of the story. The exposition. All my clothes were new. I was to be cast into the school for the first time. As he walks along holding onto his father's hand, he occasionally turns to ask his father why he must go. So he feels that perhaps he is being sent away from home as a punishment. Although his father reassures him he is not convinced that there really was any good to be had in tearing me away from the intimacy of my home. At the gate of the school, the boy hesitates again and must be gently pushed by his father to enter the schoolyard, telling him to be a man. The father explains that today you truly begin life. Upon stepping into the yard, the boy sees the faces of the boys and girls, but feels like a stranger who had lost his way. One boy approaches and asks who brought him to the school. When he replies that it was his father, the boy states that his own father is dead. He makes friends with some of the boys and falls in love with some of the girls. He describes a school day with its ups and downs, trials and tribulations. When the bell rings to announce the end of the day, he steps outside the gate, but his father is not waiting there for him as promised. He encounters a familiar middle-aged man. They greet one another and shake hands before the man moves along. He finds that the street and surroundings have completely changed. Where was the street lined with the garden? Where had it disappeared to? When did all these vehicles invade, and when did all these hordes of humanity come to rest upon its surface? That's why he questions that how could all of this happen in half a day? So the resolution, he is unable to cross the street, and finally a young lad offers to help him across, addressing him, "Grandpa, let me take you across." The story shows that time passes quickly and we all grow old. It talks about the ups and downs of life and how we change over time. It's a reminder that life is short and we should enjoy every moment. So through the story, the characters wasn't given a specific name. This implies that we are represented by them or they represent humanity in general. So since the story is in an allegorical level, the boy in the first paragraph of the story represents innocence. Then the father represents guidance and support. Then the teacher who introduces the wonders of life or the reality of life and sometimes punishes students. On an allegorical level, the teacher is not an individual or person, but life itself, because she offers many wonders, realities, and punishment. Then the young lady or the young lad, then lastly, the young lad who helped the grandpa cross the street. So, as you can see there, from the boy to the father to the middle-aged man to the young lad, there is a cycle of life. So the settings is the home where he don't want to be torn away with the intimacy of his home, the school where he learns many things, and the outside of the school where he waited for his father as promised, and across the street where he found out that the surroundings completely changed for just half a day, and his entire life feels like half a day. So here are some of the themes of the story. One here is becoming of age. This is the transition from childhood to adulthood, and that's normal. Next here is the time and memory. Time is constantly moving or fast-paced, and the fact that we cannot type down or buy more of it. So kung pwede sana bilhin, why not, diba? Then, of course, when we were old already, we just reminisce the memory and then our um, share our experiences to our grandson or our granddaughter, for them also to learn from us. Then, of course, we should acknowledge that we are growing old. So, we should seize the day or enjoy every moment in our life. Then, of course, the cycle of life. It, uh, it is concerned with the stages of life from childhood to adulthood. Then we are already then old or being a grandpa or a grandma. So this story is telling us that time is precious, life is precious, dapat hindi natin sayangin. Because sabi nga niya, from entering the school to the end of the school day, it feels like a half a day. So now, the author's style in writing the story is in an allegorical level, which means the events and characters are not interpreted at a literal level but at a symbolic one. He also used descriptive and narrative languages, and that's why readers are able to picture out each event in the story. Example here is the school is described as huge, high-walled fortress. So the narrative illustrates an original way of crafting the short story, emphasizing its inventive structure and presentation. Another, when it comes to internationalization perspective, the story invites readers to reflect on their own past experiences, creating a deep connection with the narrative. And of course, I use the existentialism approach because the story talks about the meaning of life, time, mortality, and nature of existence. Now let's proceed with Thomas Eric Pitt. He was born on August 12, 1882 at Liverpool, and he died on February 22, 1934 at the age of 51. His parents were Thomas P. and Salome Fowler. He is a British Egyptologist and archaeologist. From 1901 onwards, he conducted excavations in Egypt from the Egypt Exploration Fund. In 1913 to 1928, he was a lecturer in Egyptology at Manchester University, served as a lieutenant during World War I in the King's Regiment Liverpool, and the Queen's College Oxford houses the university's Egyptology library, and it is named Pitt Library in his honor. So here are some of his works: the rough stone monuments and their builders, the Stone and Bronze Ages in Italy and Sicily, and Egypt and the Old Testament. Now, let's dig deeper to the poem To Whom Should I Speak Today? The poem explores themes of distrust to fellow men. It voices the idea that problems in human relation were as acute as they are now. So, the writer of this poem is a patriotic military who enlists in multiple wars which he believed they should win. Due to this reason, he barely talked to his family, loved ones, and friends that caused him to feel pain and sadness. So, to whom should I speak today? Brothers are evil, friends of today love not. So, this stanza shows that the speaker has been hurt or betrayed by those he considered family. However, in contrast to Tony Gonzaga said that kalabanin mo ng lahat, wag lang ang kapatid mo. So the word to whom should I speak today shows that the speaker is searching for someone to talk to. The friends of today love not. This shows that even those who seem like friends are not truly there when in times of need, or they're just only the These are the friends with benefits. Andyan lang sila kapag may kailangan sila. And the speaker is telling us, maybe, speaker is telling us to choose our friends, even though it's only one or two. The important thing is they will not betray you. In stanza 2, hearts are covetous, every man plundereth the gods of his fellow. This means that people's hearts are filled with greed and desire for more. The speaker sees that people are not contented with what they have and they always want more. And people are stealing from each other and they are taking advantage of one another for personal gain. So the speaker sees the world as a place where people are constantly competing and harming each other for material possession. In stanza 3, the peaceful man is in evil case, good is cast aside everywhere. So in this stanza shows that um, huwag mong galitin ang taong mabait dahil iba sila kung magalit. And it shows here also that goodness is ignored, where the speaker sees the world that there is no kindness and people are cruel. In stanza 4, to whom should I speak today? Yesterday is forgotten, may do not as they were done by nowadays. The speaker is comparing the past, and perhaps today. That today is the past is forgotten, and people nowadays is immoral. It's like there is no humanity in the people in today's era. And the speaker is reflecting on the past that where people is decent, kind, respectful, and caring, and somehow that's the fact that is really happening today. And next is stanza 5. There is no heart of man whereon one might lean. The speaker feels there is no one who can truly be there for him and no one whose heart is open and willing to offer support. Perhaps some of us are feeling this way sometimes, and the feeling that there is no one to lean on. And the speaker is longing for someone they can rely upon. However, there is no one who could provide comfort. In stanza 6, to whom should I speak today? The righteous are no more. The land is given to evil doers. So this stanza or this statement expresses the speaker's belief that good people or those who are honest and just have vanished. They are now surrounded by those who are driven by selfish motives, and the persona is saying that the world is now controlled by cruel people or the corrupt people. One example here is um, some people are giving food to the poor people. However, they are they are recording them so that they can post it in social media, and then they can earn money. That's one example. Then in stanza 7, there is a lack of confidence. Men have recourse to a stranger to tell their troubles. Perhaps the persona actually have a family, but he wasn't able to share his problem, and he tend to open up to strangers. And sometimes we do this because we prefer to share our burden to other people or other strangers because they listen compared to our family, kasi sasabihin nila na dami mong arte. And yeah, and for us Filipinos, we are not expressive. That's why siguro some of us are yung parang the feeling na punong-puno ka na, and then you just share to other people or other strangers. On the eighth stanza, I am laden with misery and I'm without a comforter. So this last line shows that perhaps the speaker is exhausted because of the burden of pain and loneliness, and he can find someone to talk to. So from these lines, I can say that people that are laden with misery, they end their lives. However, on the other hand, some people choose to fight and seek for help. So, so if you understood the poem, the persona is flat in character. Why? Because from the beginning to end, the persona's emotion didn't change. Diba? Then from the first stanza, the persona doesn't trust his brothers and on the other hand, the last stanza shows that the persona is laden with misery. That's why I said that it is flat in character. So the purpose of this poem is to tell to the readers that the connectedness lies between human relationship that is slowly being forgotten and replaced by acts of personal gain.